Hello and welcome to Hannam Guitars and Ukuleles. This is going to be one of my most lengthy videos I've posted. It's probably like 2.5 hours, I think. I'm filming this about a year after I shot the footage of the repair that I'm going to show you. I haven't heard back from the guy in a year, so I guess it all worked. It was a pretty complicated thing. I told the customer I didn't know if it was going to work because the break is so severe. It's like almost a right angle and just end grain to end grain. I thought, well, I like a challenge, so I'll help you out. And yeah, I turned this job around in a week, which was pretty, it's just nice to be able to do that for somebody, and it worked out really well. And I think the result looks really good for under a, just for a couple of days. And I think I sprayed over 2 days, I think it was, and just straight off the gun. I didn't buff it or anything, and it looked really good, as you'll see. Don't skip to the end. So I've sped up a lot of stuff and then kept a lot of stuff, stuff that I thought would be important for you to see, just how I'm holding the rasps and the chisels and the sandpaper and stuff. I mean, I think that's really interesting as a luthier to see somebody do that. You might not, so just skip through it. I could have edited this video down to an hour or even 10 minutes, but I like long format stuff, which makes you learn better, basically. So I don't apologize for long videos, but sorry. If you find this helpful, please like and subscribe. It really helps me out, and let me know what you think. But I hope you enjoy it. I enjoyed the challenge of making this job work, and to give it back to the customer in under a week, and so he could go on and play his music. He's a local kid who plays North Mexican music around Grand Junction, so all the best to him, and this guitar will live to save another day. Spoilers, the repair works. So enjoy. So because this video is such a deep dive into how to fix this instrument, I thought I'd just give a rundown of what I'm going to do. So the first thing I do is just do a basic epoxy glue up of the two bits, the neck to the headstock. That's just to get them together. It's not meant to, forever hold them. It's just a first principle kind of thing. Then I go into the jig that I have to make to route the splints, the splint channels, and I have some supplementary footage which I shot especially for that. Then how to find the splint radius, so the radius of the splint, and you get that from the jig, and you'll see what I mean by that. Then I epoxy in the splints and shape them with chisel, rasp, sandpaper, all that, just a rough shape down to basically to the neck. And then I'm at a point where that would usually be enough, but because this was like a right angle break, then I go into the next part, which is the back strap. So I think the most interesting part of the video is when I shape the neck for the back strap, and I go really deep down into the neck for that, and I'm constantly looking for the truss rod. I'll draw a little picture of what I mean. Then I use a contour gauge to make the back strap out of a chunk of mahogany, and then I to show how to sand fit that to the scoop that I make, and all this will make sense once you watch the video. After I epoxy that chunk of wood on, then I shape that, and then I also add a volute, and I add a little bit more meat to the neck, just sort of around the break area where it's the weakest. Then I get into the finish stuff. There's finish prep, just basically making everything, all the surface of the neck and the repair area nice, and I drop fill that, and I pre-stain it black, and then I grain fill the wood with CA glue, then I spray some black color onto the area, and then take it out into the sun and just see if I can see any problem areas where it needs more black or anything. Then I show you how to do a nitro mix with retarder thinners, and why I use retarder thinners is because I only want to spray a minimum of clear coats, because I don't want to buff this. It's just going to be a finish straight off the gun and give it back to the customer in under a week, which is quick for this repair with spraying, because normally with a high-end repair which includes finish work, you would have to spray the clear coats and then wait at least a month before you can cut it back and buff it, and it's all flat. But this guy, aesthetics wasn't a primary concern, it was just getting this guitar back on the road. So what I do in this video is this is the neck. Nuts about there. And the break was it's about there. So the first thing I do is route for the splints, and I go pretty deep for that, and then I take, and they're extend up, and so I trim them down, so all this is back to basically the black line. That was a green line, by the way, it didn't really show up. And then the part which I said was the most interesting, number 5, shaping the neck for the back strap. So I didn't know where the truss rod started or ended. So I was carefully rasping out this area, going down as deep as I can, very deep, until I hit the truss rod, and then stopped. And then I add the back strap itself, which is basically a big chunk of wood which goes in there, and let's say that's that chunk of wood. And then with this back strap, I add a volute to it, and then I take it down a little bit slower than the original neck. What I mean by that is I leave a little bit of meat here, and by meat I mean wood, because if you can just, even if you steal a millimeter or 32nd extra wood, that's way more strength. And the volute is another strengthening mechanism. So I added some more meat here, or left wood here, just a little bit, and it wasn't enough to, when you were in the first position, feeling it and going, this neck is way fatter now, this feels weird. So those were the 3 things, the 3 kind of main things that I do, and then I just, the rest is fairly straightforward. but I thought it'd be interesting to keep all that, just the finish prep and the grain filling of the raw wood, and then the nitro mix, and the finish comes out great. If I saw it now, like a year later, I'm filming this a year later, it would, I'm sure the splint area here, which you'll see, although I grain fill it well with epoxy and CA glue, I'm sure there's telegraph marks here, just because over time lacquer shrinks back and reveals itself. What I would do if this was a higher end instrument, I would add a third thing. So there's the splints, then there's the back strap. If this is a high end instrument with the same brake, I would add a third back strap, which would be a thin veneer that would just go over this entire area, so the back of the headstock would just look absolutely seamless. And I would, try and make the back strap extend further than this side of the splint as well, so you wouldn't get a telegraph mark here. But that's a high-end instrument, or a higher-end instrument. This was just a cheap 12-string that needed to be done quick and really cheap. So with all that in consideration, please enjoy the video. So here's the brake. Almost the right angle. It's like the worst kind of brake you can have. There it is, against a little stumpy. I didn't think it was going to work, gotta be honest. And I didn't take any video footage of me epoxying it up, but I taped off all the areas I didn't want excess epoxy, just for, helps clean up. Blackened epoxy there, just to thicken it up a bit. I did that after I used straight epoxy just to wet the fibers, and then I just used tape to sort of stretch the tape, and so it was kind of a self-clamping, self-pulling thing. There's the end result, and that was pretty strong as is, but obviously needed more. Okay, so here we are the next day. First thing I do, check the epoxy, and that's gone off good, really good. And it doesn't matter if this is messy and everything, because of what we will be doing, I will be doing. So this probably isn't very strong. Now I'm just gonna lightly flex it. A little bit of strength there, but you would be an idiot to leave it like that. So next thing I'm gonna do is route for some splines, and I'll do that. I don't know where the truss rod ends or begins, but it wasn't visible from here, so it must be, maximum starting about there in the middle. So I can't route kind of in the middle here, but what I'm going to try and do is route down there and then there with probably 1/4 inch route a bit. I'll have to secure the guitar in the neck and make some sort of routing jig for it, and then I will inlay some wood into that, and then after that I'm going to take all of this down about 1/8 of an inch, at least this area, and then inlay or lay on top of that more wood and then fair it all in and then paint it black. It's going to be quite an experiment. I actually don't know if it's going to work because that break was like almost at a right angle. It's just a crazy break that the wood must have been just crap. But you know, at least that's just this simple epoxy job there's a reasonable amount of strength there. So on to the next part. So I didn't take any footage of this, the making of the jig, but I can talk you through it. Here I am describing the radius with a pencil and line, just using this sander to sand the curve, all jigged up. Filing the carriage so it slides, filing curve into this carriage, waxing those areas so it slides very easily. And the next part is I did some supplementary footage of describing this jig more. So then there's the router bit sticking out, the neck in the jig, and then I made that thing, just a neck holder that came in handy. I used that multiple times during this repair, and that jig worked wonders. So here's some supplementary footage taken a year later describing it all. Hello, so I'm filming this about 1 year after all the rest of the footage that you're going to see. I just editing it and rewatching it, I realized I didn't talk about this, the one of the most important things in this video. So here is that talk. First of all, just the basic dimensions of this are about 13.5 inches long by 7 inches wide. This is 3/4 inch plywood. This is just a kind of a simple neck holder. This actually works really good, as you'll see in the video, for holding the guitar down while I'm working on the neck. The curvature. So what I did to get that, I just tied a piece of string to a pencil, and I can't remember if I measured it or not, or if I just sort of did it and it was good. But it, as it turns out, I used about a 9, as far as I can make out, a 9-inch curve. Actually, I'll do it here. Can see that. So it's about a 9, maybe 8.5 inch curve. So what I'll do, and as you'll see, if you make one of these jigs, just take note of this curve, because as you'll find out, and as I found out, it will come in handy knowing that, because when you extend the router bit down past this thing, which I'll get to in a second, you can work out exactly the radius of the splints that you need to make. And you know, you'll have to sand and plane them just to get a perfect fit, but you'll get a far more accurate fit than what I did. And I'll leave the original footage in so you can see me kind of umming and ahhing. What the router sits on the carriage or whatever is this, and I also don't really talk about this, but this is just a Harbor Freight, well, the holes are for a Harbor Freight laminate trimmer with a 1/4 inch bit. These rails I made to fit nicely in here, and there's no side to side wobble. It's kind of impressive that I was able to do that, really, to be honest. And then you'll see that I wax these, and they go nicely. And then I had to sand all this back so it cleared the headstock that comes up here, and also these, which kind of stick out a bit. This is curved, as you'll see. The other thing with this carriage, which I do mention, but I'll mention again briefly, this corresponds to the jig rails, but the center of the router bit is actually offset, and I did that just enough so if I am routing on this orientation, I'm on, one side of the truss rod, and when I flip it around this way, I'm on the other side of the truss rod. So that's that just means that I didn't have to move the actual neck in the jig from side to side. So this is a much better way to do it, having an offset hole. So that's another tip. But yeah, this jig works really well. There is a different way to do this, which I don't talk about in the footage. So a neck comes up here at like a, let's say 15-degree angle. When I made this, the radius works well, but what happens is so the splints are going to be a continuous radius, so they're going to be, it's quite difficult to get the deepest part of the jig lined up with the nut area. This is completely out of scale. Let's say the nut is here. So what I did, if this is back a bit, you dig far more into this area than where you really want it, which is like right here. So there is another way to make this jig, which is to kind of take that into account. Instead of just having a radiused curve or a continuous radius, you could have kind of a shape like that. So you could really position this so it went deep into right where you needed the splint to be, which would give the maximum strength. Okay, so this is going to be a little tricky to make out, but this is masking tape just here. Here you can see the router bit, the 1/4 inch router bit just here on this side. Let's just call it the right side of the neck. And then when I flip this around, now it's on side. So it's just a nicely offset router bit, well, jig. So this is, actually I can't slide it up because the router bit is extended, but a bit of trial and error. But jigs do not have to be good looking in order to work perfectly. So this rides perfectly on these rails. The deepest part is right sort of under the nut here. So this just corresponds to the deepest part here. Probably can't make it out, but this is offset to those two rails here. So this side it's a little bit closer to, the router bit is a bit closer to this side. So that will be, that corresponds to that side. And then flip it around. That side. And the tape, put it straight down the center, 1/4 inch, and then I put 2 more bits on either side just to widen it up. I don't know how wide the truss rod channel is that they use on Takamines, but somewhere between 1/2 inch and 1/4 inch. So let's put this to work. So that was a complete success. I'm going to go a bit deeper because I want to get basically all the way down to where the nut is, basically the top of the headstock, because this is just so end grainy, it's just ridiculous. It needs a lot. But the good news is I didn't go near the truss rod. So just as a point of reference, this is, the headstock is about 15 mil, which is typical, and that would be the thinnest part. So if we just slide this along, see how deep we are. So close. And then where we need it, we're about 10 mil. And then it keeps going up. So that's going to be enough. So 10 mil is this much, half an inch is this much. So that's, you know, a nice depth. I can't go any deeper and keep this nice curve because I can't go any deeper here because this is too thin. I would like to go deeper here. I could fix that by modifying this, the shape of this, so it's sort of goes in deeper just here, but I'm not going to. If I get another job like this, then I will. So one thing has come to light after I cut these splines in, and that was the grain direction of this neck. I assumed that the grain was horrible because of the original crack happened at, you know, whatever degree that is, 80 degrees or something. But you can see here, this neck was scarf jointed. That's the glue line there. And the neck wood grain runs there. And then the scarf wood runs in that direction, actually a bit much less. About that. Yeah, that bottom one. And you can see there, and then there's the glue line there. So it wasn't the grain of the neck or the grain of the wood that was the problem with this. And after I took on the job, the guy told me that he strings up this 12 string with 2 sets of extra light gauge 6-string sets, which are 10 to 47. Now each set is 135 pounds, so that adds up to 270 pounds of string tension. A normal 12-string set, the EJ41 extra light 9 to 45, has 220 pounds of string tension, and the EJ38 has 250 pounds, so 270 is a bit more. So that is why this neck snapped at such a strange, harsh angle. Very interesting. Well, it's interesting if you're into wood grain and tensions and stuff. Now I show you how to make some splints. There's 3 ways that I do it here. The first way is the least accurate, but it's just involves a little bit of planing and sanding. The second way is using a contour gauge, and then the third way is the most accurate but takes the longest. So I'm using a piece of quarter sawn maple for the splints, and it's quarter sawn that way. The first way is just to use the curve of the jig, and it's quite accurate. It just involves a little bit of planing down in the middle to match the curve of the splint to the actual curve that has been routed. This is the quickest, simplest way, and this obviously involves a little bit of woodworking, but it's a good enough way. So after marking them to 1/4 inch, which matches the router bit, just sanding them down here and went back and forth a little bit, checking, and got them to fit really nicely. Nice friction fit. Now, while they fit nicely side to side, you can see the dilemma of using the first method. It's because the router bit sticks out, so to speak, deeper than the curve of the jig, and so the radius of the routed area is larger than the splint radius, and then you get this rocking, which makes it necessary to plane and manipulate the middle of the splint to match the contour. So the second way is to use a contour gauge to match really accurately the curve that was routed, which is different to the curve of the jig. Obviously you need a longer one, but you can get the general curve to match pretty well, and you can see when I match this up against the splint taken from the jig that it is a different curve. So the third method involves knowing the arc radius of the jig that we made, and we made a note of it at the beginning, which was about 9 inches, 8.5, 9 inches. And so you just put a straight edge over the trough of the jig, and from the bottom edge of that straight edge you measure down to the deepest part of the routed area, and in this case it's 15 mil. That number will change according to the job and the neck thickness and all that, but in this case 15 mil. And then you just draw that curve onto the splint. So you have the radius jig, which was 9 inches, and then you just add 15 mil to that radius, so 9 inches plus 15 mil, and you just use the same method to draw the arc that we did to make the jig, which is pencil on a string, and then your splint will have a perfect curve to it. And I say perfect, it'll probably still need to be touched up so it doesn't rock and the ends are tight and all that sort of thing, but that's a very accurate method. You just have to. The other thing to take note of is this third method will only work if the jig has a continuous arc or radius. If you use that other method where it's sort of like a parabolic U shape, it won't work. And just as a reference to show you the splint radius difference of the first method and the third method, you can see it here. The difference is about 3/30 seconds on the end. So we can put these splints in here, and you can see that they're fitting well because there's no gap at the end. Before, when the splint's radius was too big, they were kind of sitting up like that. So if there is a little bit of a gap, it's not actually going to worry me because I'm going to be filling or gluing these in with black epoxy, thickened a little bit, and then this is all getting trimmed, and then this will all get taken down further, and a back strap will be put on. So there's plenty of opportunity to fill up anything, and after the back strap's put on, then it's all got to be sanded and carved and then finished. So there's a lot to go. So it doesn't have to be absolutely perfect here, but that's perfect enough. There's maybe like a half a 64th at the end of this one. I am absolutely not worried about that. So on with the epoxy. So before you mix up the epoxy, just mask off everywhere that you don't want epoxy to get to, so you can keep everything clean. Just makes cleanup way easier. So to glue in the splints, I'll be using West Systems epoxy mixed with lamp black and ebony dust to thicken it up a bit. The ratio for West is 5:1, so 10 mils resin, 2 mils hardener. Just mix that up well, and then add the dust and lamp black, and then mix it again for another 30 seconds to a minute. And that's going to be a really black mixture, and it's going to be perfect for this particular job on a guitar, which is black. So I do want to see squeeze out here, and I do want to make sure that all the surfaces in there are wet. So it's all black in there now. So I'll just go back in and just kind of put a whole bunch more epoxy in. and this will create a lot of squeeze out and just fill up any little gaps there may be in there, because I can't see it obviously. West Systems suggest or recommend covering each surface with glue, epoxy, so just keep an eye on the squeeze out, just make sure it's happening everywhere, and then just wipe away the excess, because it's just stuff you'll have to clean up. So a lot of squeeze out, that's good, exactly what I want. So there is such a thing as too much squeeze out, which is when all the glue is prohibiting the spline or whatever it is from getting right down low and being seated. So just make sure that isn't the case, and I'm just going to check that by looking at the very ends. If the very ends are seated, then everything else will be. And there's so much squeeze out, I don't need to worry about wetting this. Just leave this for overnight, the rest of the day, and see how it looks in the morning. So just getting these splints down with the chisel, just pay attention to the grain direction. You can see this first cut goes pretty deep, doesn't go right to the end, but you just have to pay attention to the cut. And I'll get out the saw, cut it down in the middle so I can work from both directions, just a little bit safer. So up to this point took about 6 minutes, and I've sped that up 800%, I think. Then I switched to a microplane rasp, which this is kind of used for zesting, but it's actually a really good woodworking tool. I think they're about $30. And you can get round ones too, which are good for heels. But yeah, this microplane leaves a nice finish. And then after the microplane, I give the old thick scraper a go. Just working these splints down slowly but surely. It's probably a bit too safe. You can probably go a bit harder than I did, but all goes well. The razor file leaves a really nice finish, and that's my file of choice for when I'm carving my own necks and when I'm doing repairs like this. You can kind of touch the original finish, and it doesn't really mar into it too much. And then back to the scraper. Just going back and forth, literally. Different directions, different tools, seeing which one works. Okay, so here are the splints all epoxied in and taken down to the surface of the original neck. I didn't really have to do this so neatly. I mean, it's obviously doesn't look neat compared to a finished instrument, but I didn't really need to flatten this so much. But I just wanted to give the neck one last look and just see how the original profile of it is, and where I can strengthen this more when I put a backstrap on. I'm going to use a chunky piece of wood, and I will absolutely be putting a volute in here as large as I can. I'm not going to be able to take it to where I want because the nut is here and the crack kind of goes there. If you have the volute further towards the frets than the nut, they're going to feel it when they're in the first position. So I'll have to finish it here, and but then I'll taper this down a little bit more. So on with the backstrap. So for this backstrap, I'm going to go as deep as I can until I hit. I have to be careful. I want to go as deep as I can around the crack area, but I need to be careful of where the truss rod starts. The trouble is I don't know where the truss rod starts, but the nut is about here. The first fret, I can't see it, but it would be about here. So normally truss rods start either just under the nut or about halfway down between the nut and the first fret, so about here. It wasn't visible when the neck was off or the headstock was off, and so I know it's not to here, and then the crack goes down there, so I know it's not at least to there. So there's not much I can do other than just carve down, and just when I think I'm going to be hitting or getting very close to the truss rod, then I'm going to stop. If I touch the bottom of the truss rod, it's not going to matter. I can the epoxy won't mar the way that works. So here we go. And I have to do this in a nice scoop. So the deeper the backstrap I go, the better. The strength. And obviously I'm not starting off too radical. There is the original scarf joint. So the headstock is scarfed down this way. Sorry, this way. looking at or taking note of where the wood is appearing and just trying to keep it somewhat symmetrical at this stage, but it's not essential. Not essential at this stage, I should say. And get a straight edge on there. You can tell how deep I've gone. It's about a little under 1/8. This is a coarse number 50 Nicholson. Pretty coarse anyway. Can't get too radical here, but I'll go up to about here probably. And I'm just paying really close attention to around here because I think the truss rod is going to appear. Soon. So I'm just about well over 1/8 of an inch deep. This is where the nut is, down here. First fret would be about here. So you'd expect to find the truss rod somewhere here, but the wood doesn't feel squishy. So this wood is definitely harder than this wood, but this wood's soft up here, and you can see it. So I'm just going to continue down and just as deep as I can go. If I can go really deep, then great. So this black squiggle line is obviously the epoxy line of the glue, and it goes down this way. And I just want to get as deep as I can in there, because going as deep as you can means it's going to be, when I add wood to this, it's going to be as strong as it can be. So curved side for this area and flat up here and here. So another thing I have to be mindful of is I have to keep the rasping and, you know, the job flat this way, because when I hit or get very close to the truss rod, I don't want the center to be higher than the sides. The sides are going to be naturally lower just because of the rocking action. Even if you're trying to really be careful, that's just going to happen. But that is easy to clean up with just some sandpaper and on a flat block. Otherwise, if it is high in the center and you hit the truss rod, you've still got to take the center down so it's on an even plane with the sides. So especially here, it doesn't matter up here, but just here I really need to be careful to keep it flat. And just to show you where I am, it's about, sorry about the exposure, it's about 1/4 of an inch, about in the deepest part. So we're going to have some nice thickness of wood to stabilize this neck, which is great. I just remembered that I have a new tool and I didn't even think about using this. That is absolutely brilliant. So this is the the pin router from Elevate Luthier, and let me just show you how good a job that just did in regard to how flat it's sanded. That's perfect. That's really amazing. And check out how deep I've gone. I'm actually really surprised that I haven't hit a truss rod yet. It's pretty crazy. That's probably 3/8 deep. Yeah. And that's good, that's right where I want it, because that's the crack just there. You can see the epoxy line there. And I don't really want to go into the holes just because of, you know, glue squeeze out and re-drilling these holes. Yeah, but this is looking really good. There's a slight hump just here, which I will deal with first of all, because I don't want this to recurve, like hump here, then recurve down here. Just makes the fitting troublesome. So I was just using the pin sander, and finally, I presume that is an indication of the truss rod channel. Okay, so this is totally flat now. And after this, I'll use a contour gauge to transfer this shape onto a piece of wood. Okay, now we're just going to use a contour gauge to replicate this shape. Make sure it's straight. Push all these little things down, which there's always some stubborn ones. Another little trick I do when I'm using a contour gauge, I just mark the limits of the piece of wood that I need, just so I'm not trying to go further than I need. It just saves wood and time sanding, as you can see. Okay, so once the shape has been transferred to the contour, then we just transfer it to here. So go down as far as you can. So there we go. That's a nice chunk of wood. Okay, so I didn't bore you with cutting out that wood, but I reasonably safely cut it out to a very vague shape of what this is. The more, or the less wood there is, the better and quicker everything goes at fitting it. And this has been sanded. What I did, I just sanded down to that line, and then I looked or placed it where it needed to go. And then I had to take off a little bit more here and a little bit more here, but at the moment I'm getting a decent enough fit. There we go. To move on to sandpaper. I might just take that hot spot off just there, if you can see that. See, there's light there and light there. So I'll just sand a little bit more there, and then move on to the sandpaper. Okay, so I put some sandpaper down, 120, I think this is, yeah. That was the coarsest stick-on that I had. And I sanded until there was just a small amount of pencil mark where the gluing area is. I also marked the spots where, or the central position, and then when I do that, I get no gap on this side, no gap on this side either. So that is ready to glue on. It probably took about 10 minutes of sanding back and forth. I only got a small amount of footage of that because it's pretty boring. Just back and forth, just keeping it level and in position. This was it's kind of a really odd shape, so it wasn't just like a nice rectangle sanding back and forth. So this is ready to go. This will be carved away, because if you look down here, just note where that is. The sanding, or this gluing area is way to the side. So this will be probably cut back about here. Okay, so we're ready to epoxy this on. But first, I'm just going to tape up just all these areas, especially these holes and the side. Okay, before I get the glue going, I just wanted to show you what I'm gonna use on this side as cauls. I'm just gonna use a standard fingerboard gluing caul for here, and then for the headstock, just some thick cork. This is great to have around just for such jobs, and then some plywood. Just some scrap there, and then on the back we'll go the thing we're going to glue to the neck. Okay, here's a little tip for you. So those two cauls, I've taped the fingerboard caul on with some wax paper here, and then I've taped the cork with wax paper down here. So all I have to do is add this and this and to clamp, and it's just going to be so much easier. Just taping any bits that need to be where they are, or where they should be when you're clamping. It's just makes life so much easier. So, tip of the day. Okay, it's the next day, and just check the epoxy, and that went off like a rock, so off with the clamps. So that's gone on perfectly, which is great. I'll have to get most of this tape off, but there's probably going to be some stuck right in there that won't get removed until I sand everything down. So on with the next part, which is just fairing all this in, getting rid of the excess, figuring out how big of a loop to do. Okay, I've just clamped up the neck with jig neck holder, which is proving to be really excellent at holding down a full body guitar. So I'm going to make a second one of these. But on with shaping this. It's going to be chiseling. Just marking here where the volute will end. So I just have to take this back to the tape, at least to the end of the tape, because that was where this all started. And I know it's obviously on this side of the hole. Sanding it, feeling it in the playing position, and just see how it feels. It's just got to feel natural. Your meat has to feel natural. So I just finished up, I think. I tested that this curve doesn't start quick enough to take this up a little bit, which it doesn't, so that's good. If it kind of started back here, then I would have had to have taken it back a bit more. But we're all good. So the neck, all necks have an even taper down here, but I just added a little bit more. Might be a bit tricky. A little bit more just coming up here, sort of from about there. There's about 30 seconds under here, but just in the playing position, it's not obvious, so that's good. So I'll leave that there. Here's the nut, and you can see where the volute is in relation to the nut, so that's not going to interfere. Ideally this would have been back here, but you know, if it's back here then it would interfere with the playing in the first position. But you know, that's a nice chunk of wood that I've inserted in there. It's, you know, from the bottom of it to the top of the volute, it's about it's an inch. So it's nice, and kind of where it more counts, it's about 2 seconds under half an inch. I don't know what that is in American, but it's 13 mil. So I'm just going to raise the grain on this with a bit of water, and then I'll dye it black, and then I'll fill up these any little inconsistencies, little gaps and stuff with some super glue, and also I'll need to do that up here and along here, just anywhere that needs some filling up, and then sand that back, re-blacken it, and then spray it black. Okay, so I'm just doing final sanding on this. This is 320 on a block. Just making sure this all fares in nicely. Making sure there's no tool marks. Stuff like that. So we're looking good, feeling good. So I'm just hitting the glue line here and kind of the neck as well, which just, if you take it all down far enough, it becomes invisible, so to speak, to the fingers. Okay, so I'm just going to raise the grain, just a couple of sprays of water. Second. So this was smooth a second ago, and then we can't see it, but it's now rough. little bits of wood. It feels kind of like, I don't know, 5 o'clock shadow now. So I'll just wait for that to dry. Actually, I can just hit it now with some 320. I'll do this off the block. Make sure you get that end grain. Smooth again. You can do this, you know, a couple of times if you really want, but I'll just be doing it once. Okay. So now onto the finishing process. Okay, so I'm using Solar Lux, which I don't know, I don't think they make anymore for some reason. So I do have some black nitro, which I'm going to be using for this, but this is just, you know, might as well get the ball rolling. Get that maple. And I'm not gonna hit it too hard. That's it for the black for now. What I'll do now is pick out this kind of problem area, which is just a bit gappy, bit of a hole. And I'll just fill it with black dust and super glue, sand it back, and also, you know, just any parts that need filling up. I'm not going to go super crazy though. There's a little bit there and down here. And then once that's dried, then I'll sand it flat again. Actually, while I'm doing that, I'll probably grain fill with CA glue, and then I will sand it all flat, re-blacken whatever needs to be re-blackened, and then spray. Okay, here we are. A little close-up of these, which is the main, or the biggest gap filling procedure I have. I could use epoxy, but that would set me back. I could use 5-minute epoxy, but there's no need. So just some black dust, ebony dust mixed with some lamp black from LMI, which is a really black pigment, and then just push it in as much as you can. But you know, don't worry too much. And then just leave it a bit high. And then
thin CA glue. And I'm just not worried about the mess. The fumes, however. I do want to hit that in a bit. I can just see that those lines are a bit not filled very well. And then after this, you can go in with thicker CA glue. But that's looking good. Man, that's horrible stuff. And I did mention I was going to grain fill. So this is just the thin stuff still, just to seal it, get rid of that paper before it goes off on your fingers and you're in trouble. So obviously this isn't grain filling very much, but it's just wetting the wood and sealing it, you know, very lightly. But I always use the thin stuff on the first go of this. Especially on that end grain. Okay, so that is going to also reveal any inconsistencies in the finish, where I'm going to need some black powder, dust. Just a tiny bit there. And I'm just remembering why I stopped using CA glue as grain fill. It's just, man, it's potent. That was the hardest part of this, to get that consistency of you know, a nice transition. The sides are a bit worse. And then once this is dry, I will just re-sand it with 80 and 120 and then 220. And that'll, you know, obviously reveal wood again, and I'll just do this again. And re-blacken it, and then we'll be, then I'll use some thicker CA glue to actually properly pour fill the raw wood. And then we can spray nitro. Okay, so I sanded down the black dust and other stuff, and you can see it's totally flat now. Then I just went back with some thick super glue and just spot filled some little areas that needed it. So that's all grain filled. I'll just sand this back now just till it's flat, and then we can spray. Razor blade action. It's a little bit safer to take this down with a razor blade. Just the excess. Heavy-handed on the thick super glue. And does not matter that if you go through, if and when you go through. What we're looking for is a flat substrate, because nitro is after this. So just removing any marks, streaks from the thick super glue. There are a few. looking very good. I can't see anything else that's troubling. So the first coat of nitro is going to go on pretty flat, which is what you want. It's just little bits to chase, but nothing major. The more perfect the surface that you spray onto, just the easier everything is. So if it's completely flat, then we're all the way there in regard to prep. I'm going to spray this so it's very flat, very even, because I'm not going to wait a month to buff this. I'm just going to give it back to the customer off the gun, and that's just a cost thing and a time thing. Usual. So just look for, see this, that was just a dot that I filled, just a little divot. Which now is all good. There's another one here which I did for the same reason. And this is just, typical spot filling. It's not gonna work with this. This is a one-sided blade, so with this down I can really get close. I need to get another knife like this, but with the opposite. Just sand until any indication is gone. There's a bit of high and low spots just in here. Not sure if you can see these tiny little, it's just 3 dots here. So I'll just sand until they're gone. Okay. Okay, we're good. I'll just go over this with 320 on a block. And unless I find anything else, this is the last time I'm going to sand this. It's spraying from now on. So I'm going to do the black in a couple of stages. The hardest part really is to get under there, like just in there. I mean, it's not hard at this stage, but to sand it nicely and then buff it nicely is quite typical. But all good at the moment. Even though it looks a bit like a zebra. Alright, so maybe just a touch more on the corner. But I think that's it. So there's no, this is all grain filled now, even though it's ugly in regard to the, black and white, it's all grain filled. And obviously these tuner holes don't matter. And so that's going to make for a pretty invisible repair. The only problem, of course, is going to be the spray transition. But I'll probably do that here. I'll scuff this all back and then spray up to here and tape off this. That's about the best you can do, otherwise this is going to be a witness line. So as my air compressor fires up, this is the colour that I'm going to put on it. You'll be able to see that it's very dark. It's basically a mixture of black and tobacco brown. It's the sort of it's the sometimes I darken the perimeter of a sunburst just a little bit, and I use this stuff. It's just a little bit less than black, but I'm going to be just putting a base coat of this on and then clear nitro over that, and then call it quits. So before I add colour, I'm just going to add a quick coat of clear, which will show up any inconsistencies. So what the clear coat did was just ensure that the black is going to stick a bit better, perhaps. Makes me feel better. And it's also a bit of a building coat. There's a, once it's glossy, I can see a few tiny imperfections just in the pores, but nothing to worry about. So on with the colour. Okay, so colour coats in Charcots. So just make sure the job is clear of dust and furry bits, whatever. This is a cheap touch-up gun from Harbour Freight. It's like $15 and it's got a 0.6mm tip, so that's good for spraying this kind of thing. I use it for tight areas and sunburst sometimes, the perimeter of the sunburst. Just laying it on thin, evenly, just with, with thought, I suppose. I'm not just randomly spraying all over the place. So when you think you're getting to a nice, good, opaque, even coat of black, take it out into the direct sunlight, and that will reveal any areas where you haven't sprayed it opaque. Okay, just so you can see the black coat in the sun. It's totally black. Very nice. So now I'm just going to put some clear coat over that, maybe two, depends, and then just leave it overnight, and then sand that clear coat down a little bit, and then continue on with a couple more coats tomorrow and maybe the next day. So here we are, the day after I just sprayed those two coats. Pardon the audio, I can't find my microphone, but you can just see some little bit of pores. And I stopped spraying it out here, but I'll eventually spray the whole thing. And here. But I'll just cut this back with a little bit of 400 and then continue spraying. Hello, so today's the third day. I put about 5 coats on yesterday, and the first day I put on 2 coats. So I just sanded it all back with 600 grit, wet and dry. I didn't attempt to spray the sides too much or up here, but they did get finish on them, and I knew that was going to happen, so I yesterday I sprayed the whole thing and the sides with a nice clear coat that melted in well. Today I just have to deal with this witness line. So you can see this is the witness line of the spray. What I'm going to do is to mask off the rest of the instrument
like end down here. So just leaving all this, I'll take the strap button off. And with the clear coats that I'm going to spray on next, I'm going to add some retarder thinners, which will help this melt into each other. And I'll spray to about here and just see how it looks. If it's not, you know, a decent finish look, then I will, the second coat, I'll sand this area and this area and just spray the whole thing with a nice thin wash coat with retarder thinners. The other thing I need to do, I haven't done yet, is this got a lot of overspray. It's sort of a dry overspray, you might be able to see it, and just dirty from everything. So I'm going to sand this back with 600, and because I am doing this, I should have taped this off so I didn't have to touch it, but this just gives me the opportunity to deal with this thing, which was, this finish came off with the neck, and this is just some epoxy residue. So I'll just fix all that. I'll just deal with this like I did the other dings in the back. That's not a ding, that's just like a finished chip from all this. And then this will get, so the whole headstock and neck up to here will get one nice, hopefully glossy retarder thinner finish. And like I said, I don't plan to buff this, so I'll wait a week and then string it up and give it back to the customer. So while I think of this, I might as well show you another way to deal with these kind of things. This is one of these archival black brush. So you can just use one of these pens, let it dry, and then CA glue fill that, and that will be another way to deal with it. Or you could use that black dye, that the Solar Lux that I used to stain the maple, or you could use the black dust with the carbon black pigment in it and CA glue, or you could use black CA glue. Yeah, there's plenty of ways. It's all ink dyeing that black and then filling up the ding. So just a couple of different ways. The only thing you need to do is seal it. I just noticed another little nick here. That was the previous ding, but I might as well deal with it. The only thing you need to do is to not spray lacquer straight onto that, because it will probably it will kind of mottle, which is a strange way of saying it will pick up the color and bleed, and you get that with hand rub sunbursts and stuff. You've got to spray a couple of dry coats over it before you do a nice wet gloss coat. Okie dokie. I'm going to sand this. Actually, no, I'm going to CA glue this and sand it. Good stuff. Expensive, but good. And that's it. You have to use the accelerator. I called the guy up who makes this, and he said it does need to have an accelerant, and this is a non-blushing accelerant. I usually give this, if it's
one of my own instruments, or a really good quality instrument, I actually leave that for about 3 days to a week even before I attempt some other coating over it, because it does continue to dry and with that shrink. But with this I'll probably wait half an hour or something and then just continue on, because life's too short for this guitar. Hello. So I'm going to mix up some special batch of lacquer which will have retarder thinners in it. So 70-30 is my typical lacquer mix to start with, and that's 70% straight cardinal nitro lacquer to 30% thinners reducer, and that's like just a good place to start for a typical Colorado day, but there isn't really a typical Colorado day. But if it's hotter, therefore the lacquer will dry quicker, I'll add more thinners or a small dash of retarder thinners, which is medium WB co-solvent. And you only need a little bit of that stuff. But I didn't want to add that to this whole thing, so... By the way, these are great pickles. Just a separate issue there. So I only need 2 coats just on a neck, so I don't need much. And I'm going to... Okay, so if you tip this out this way, you get excessive splashing, but if you tip it out the way I'm going to show, you get less. So there's about 2 inches of lacquer in there. Don't laugh if I get this everywhere. That'll be enough of that. Yeah, that'll be enough. So this is my little test piece of wood. It doesn't need to be big, but maybe a bit bigger than this would be good. This is just what I had. I made this ages ago. Just a dark piece of wood is better. This is actually maple that I just stained black. And then just, if I haven't sprayed for, a month or a couple of days, or the weather's changed, I just spray straight onto this, and I can see really clearly how nicely the gun is spraying on that particular day. And like I said, if you live in a part of the world that the temperature and the humidity is very similar, then you don't have to worry about it. But I can go from snowy to sunny in the same day, or rather I should say from cold to pretty hot, and it just changes how I have to mix my lacquer. So if you just have one of these, it really helps. So this is straight off the gun, just like 10 seconds ago. That is spraying nicely. I got the recipe good for today. Just a tiny bit of air bubbling just there, but that was, I went from right to left and I probably just didn't start off the job enough. But you know, that's, I mean, you can see that it's not totally flat, but that's just the substrate. I'm just looking for any orange peel and stuff, and there isn't any there, so that is good. So on to spraying the actual job. All taped up, ready to get sprayed. So here we have the finished spray job. It's not perfect. There's a few little bits, but all in all, it's nice for, you know, how much this guy is paying, which is very little. It's just a local kid. This spray job, or this finishes straight off the gun. I could get it smoother with, you know, just how you normally get things really smooth. You spray, you know, enough coats to level sand it, spray more coats, and then wait a month and then buff it. But this has just been, I just sanded it, I put I put one coat on with the retarder thinners, and then just left it for a couple of days. And this is the result. I'm not going to buff it, I'm not going to do anything else, because the kid doesn't have money to do like a perfect job, and it doesn't need it. You know, I managed to fair in this area, or rather melt in. There's a little bit of a grain scratching from just there, from I think 600, but I might just buff that little bit. But as for the kind of witness line, I did a really good job of not having an obvious one, or I just pressed the gun lever, I suppose. The retarder thinners did the job for me. So I'm going to string it up now. So here we have the strung up instrument, and it has 2 sets of these on it. Kind of like a huge bouzouki or something. And this is tuned down to D. So all the strings are down 1 step or 1 tone. And I just put them on like 20 minutes ago, so they're stretching out. The back of the headstock looks good. Bit of a witness mark there. I think that's from the spline, maybe it's not. I'll just say it is. And a little bit in there. I'm trying to catch the reflection. So, it's a fair bit of meat there, new meat, as they say in prison. I have no idea, but I think this is going to hold up perfectly well. This finishes just straight off the gun, so it's and it had the retarder things in it, so it's pretty darn flat, about as flat as you can get off a gun, without, you know, sanding it flat and buffing. But all in all, turned out well, so I'm happy with the result that I got, especially for my first time. I don't actually think I would do anything different next time. If it was a more expensive guitar, or the person wanted to throw more money at it, I would have, you know, touched up all these little bits and pieces and kept this for, you know, a month until the lacquer was dry, and then sand it back to 5,000 and then buff it. But this is a pretty quick fix and cheap, so, and you know, it's all it needs. So thanks for watching. It's been a bit of a long process, and I hope you, like me, learned something. And good luck with it if you get on with this job yourself. Cheers. Please subscribe. Bye. So you made it to the end. Wow. Thank you for watching everything. I hope you learned as much as you needed to know. Please like and subscribe. Please subscribe more than like, but like as well. Leave a comment if you so desire. Oh, the notification buttons, the little bell thing, you know, all the things you do and hear from YouTube people. Friggin' annoying, aren't we? Hope you learned something. See you later.